What's going on, guys? Welcome back. And you may remember that back in September of last year, I got LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga for my birthday. And a little over 5 months later, I have finally completed the game. There's a lot to do in this game, 1,200 Hobbricks to collect in total. And now that I've finished it, I figured I'd give you my thoughts on it, because it's actually been met with somewhat mixed reviews since its release back in April. Now, I would like to preface this with the fact that I wouldn't call myself much of a gamer. I am a LEGO gamer. I've played around 90% of LEGO games out there, so I love LEGO games, but I'm not very experienced in the world of gaming, nor do I know a lot about the process of video game design. I am simply giving my perspective on this game as someone who is a fan of Star Wars, LEGO games, and LEGO Star Wars games. With that out of the way, let's get into the Skywalker Saga. Right off the bat, it is important to note that I liked all the previous LEGO Star Wars games. LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, being the original LEGO game, is obviously a classic, despite certain aspects of it being dated at this point in time. LEGO Star Wars 3 The Clone Wars is one of my favorite LEGO games of all time, and I think LEGO Star Wars The Force Awakens got way too much flack back in the day. How does the Skywalker Saga compare to those games? I'd say it stands alongside them pretty well, although it's far from being the best LEGO game of all time, as some people have claimed it is. But it isn't the worst either. It kind of falls somewhere in the middle for me. It certainly does some things the best out of any LEGO game, but you can also tell that there were certain limitations placed on them while making it. One of the best things about this game is the updated animation or graphics. I've heard people saying they used a new engine for this game. I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about that, but I can certainly say the animation quality has been bumped up substantially from the previous LEGO Star Wars games, which have just gotten better visually with each installment, and this is quite easily the most gorgeous LEGO game to date. It's actually kind of insane how good it is on that level. The environments were so beautiful and photorealistic, I just had to stop playing at certain points and take some screenshots. I'm not kidding, it was that impressive. The gameplay mechanics introduced in the previous LEGO Star Wars games have also been perfected in this one, particularly the combat, whether that be the lightsaber duels, blaster battles, or space missions. The lightsaber duels and blaster battles heavily utilize over-the-shoulder first-person perspectives, which is a new addition to the LEGO game franchise, and it was a welcome one, in my opinion. It really helped ground the action and pull you into it even more so than the previous LEGO Star Wars games, and the space missions were also incredibly satisfying to play through. It's never been more entertaining to use a proton torpedo on an approaching enemy before in a LEGO game. And it's just incredibly fun to travel the galaxy and explore all of these different planets from the 9 Skywalker Saga films as a multitude of different characters. There are nearly 900 characters in this game, not counting the DLC, and combining some of those characters made for some very funny and awkward team-ups. One particularly funny combination during my playthrough was the unlikely duo of Jango Fett and Mace Windu. There was also something highly amusing about seeing Emperor Palpatine himself helping random civilians around the galaxy accomplish what I'm sure he would consider to be rather menial tasks. And as per usual with the LEGO games, the humor was top-notch. It's never too kiddish, and there are a lot of clever jokes implemented, but even beyond that, this game was extremely meta and self-aware of a lot of the sillier elements of the Star Wars franchise, to the point where certain levels were named after memes. For example, the level where Obi-Wan fights General Grievous is titled
So uncivilized.
Or one of the levels in The Rise of Skywalker, which is titled,
They fly now!
I wouldn't say I hate the Star Wars sequels as much as some other people out there, but I don't really like them either. I feel mostly indifferent towards them at this point in time, but I really enjoyed how much the levels based off of the sequel trilogy in this game poked fun at how stupid some of the aspects of those films are. A certain dialogue exchange between Rey and Kylo Ren during their battle on the wreckage of the second Death Star really did make me realize how strange and underdeveloped the dynamic between those two characters actually was inside of the films. Before continuing on, I do want to restate the fact that I had a total blast with this game. It's a lot of fun, and I would recommend playing it, but I also feel it's important to explain some of my criticisms of this game, and why I can understand certain people disliking it or being disappointed by it. One of the oddest aspects of this game are the levels, which don't feel like normal LEGO game levels. Firstly, there are only 5 mini-kits rather than the 10 that we're used to, and they also feel strangely condensed. I like to think of LEGO game levels as consisting of 3 different sections. The first section introduces you to the level, while the middle section bridges the gap between the beginning and end, while also building up to the climax, which is usually a boss fight or significant event of some type. But in this game, the levels consist of only one section. In fact, a lot of them are boss fights. Almost every level in Revenge of the Sith is a boss fight, whether it be with Dooku, Grievous, Palpatine, Anakin. They all start to blend together, which kind of takes the power out of playing through those events. Not only were the levels abnormally short, but it also feels like at points they chose to adapt the wrong parts of the films into levels. The most boring movies to play through in this game were The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, because not a lot of the levels based off of those films were actually entertaining to play through. For example, in The Last Jedi, there's a level where you have to escape from prison as Rose and Finn. You may remember that in the film, they escape on the horse-like creatures known as Fathiers. So, my logical expectations were that I would get to play through the sequence of them escaping on those horse creatures. But rather, once you escape from the prison block, the level just ends, and I was left scratching my head wondering why they chose to make us play through the most boring part of that sequence, while excluding the most exciting part of it. And although I did give credit to the humor earlier in this review, I would like to circle back and explain how I feel the humor can be equally detrimental to the quality of the game. Some of you may say, it's a LEGO game, what did you expect? And if you're using that defense, then I simply feel you're not giving enough credit to the older LEGO games, which I think balanced their tone very well. They injected humor, which never compromised the emotions of the scenes that it was a part of. Let's use Darth Vader's death scene as an example. In LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, there's no dialogue, so we simply hear Vader and Luke mumble at each other for a few seconds before Vader dies, and Luke blows a kiss and touches his father's forehead. It's a strangely touching moment, shortly before Luke closes the ramp on the shuttle and we see Vader's body slump onto the ship. Likewise, in LEGO Star Wars The Force Awakens, we have a similarly comedic scene between Luke and Vader where he switches out his head, and then the camera pans over to show us a few of the Emperor's royal guard crying because they have been so emotionally moved by this redemption. But in both of those instances, they waited until the emotional impact of the scene had taken place before injecting humor. In LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, immediately after Vader dies, a mouse droid pops up in the background and speeds away wearing Vader's helmet. Something about that just didn't sit right with me. It didn't work as well as the previous two adaptations of those scenes within the LEGO game franchise. Another example from LEGO Star Wars The Force Awakens is Han Solo's death scene, which is surprisingly devoid of humor. It sticks very true to the spirit of that scene from the film. Although the camera cuts away from Han getting impaled to keep the scene family-friendly, we do see Han fall off the bridge to his death. However, in the Skywalker Saga's version of this scene, Han takes Kylo Ren's lightsaber and accidentally cuts a hole in the bridge below him, essentially killing himself. This drastically changes the context of that scene, and it was just too goofy in my opinion. I can understand that it's difficult to generate humor from such a dark scene, but there were far better options than what they ended up going with. All of the issues I've just talked about are only exacerbated by the fact that this game has very little variety. Now, as previously stated, a lot of the levels in this game can start to blend together after a while. You can expect one of 3 different types of level in this game. One type is where you're just kind of meandering about trying to accomplish some sort of small goal or escape from a location, a level where you're fighting enemies in space, or a boss fight level, and on very rare occasions a level where you have to wander around in order to arrive at a boss fight. That's about it in regards to variety in levels throughout this game. A lot of the free roam missions also began to feel stale and repetitive. I got especially tired of the amount of missions that involved smuggling a crate through hyperspace only to be intercepted mid-flight and having to fight off 3 different waves of enemy fighters. There were occasions when the mission giver would give you an objective, and as the mission went along, that objective would change, and whenever that happened, it was pleasantly surprising. But most of the time, the missions followed a pretty strict formula. And from what I've seen, the DLC for this game is pretty egregious. None of the new characters have voice lines, and a lot of them just reuse animations from other pre-existing characters in the game. I've seen some people saying that all the characters in the game feel the same, because the character grid in this game has been split into different categories, whether that be Jedi, Sith, Bounty Hunter, etc., and the characters from each of those categories all serve the same general purpose. But if you ask me, this has always been a convention of LEGO games. There have always been characters with specific abilities required to unlock a collectible or accomplish a certain goal. But I can understand in this game's case, the recycling of character animations can certainly add to the feeling that the creative team on this game just chose to cop out at certain points. With all that being said, that's just about it for my thoughts on LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. I just wanted to give my 2 cents on this game because there's been so much buzz surrounding it, and rightfully so. It is flawed, but a lot of those flaws are due to circumstance. As some of you may know, this game went through production hell. The release date was changing constantly. I believe it was originally meant to release back at the end of 2019 to coincide with the release of The Rise of Skywalker, but it was pushed back into 2020, then into 2021, and it just finally released last April. So, I do not envy the creative team, the task that they were asked to take on with this game, and the pandemic undoubtedly affected its production. But despite all those variables, the creative team's love for Star Wars still shows through in the finished product. There are so many clever Easter eggs and references thrown in for the fans, and not just fans of Star Wars either. There's a mission you have to do in this game that references 3 different Lord of the Rings memes. I'm not kidding, it's actually pretty amazing. But you guys let me know. What are your thoughts on LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga? Do you agree with me that this game is fun but flawed, or do you think it is the best LEGO game of all time? Just whatever your thoughts are, please let me know them all in the comments below. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.